Hello, welcome to the August 31st, 2021 Club Cubase live stream. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. I'm going to do a quick audio test on my end, make sure everything is coming through as expected. Hello, welcome. All right, everything sounds fine there. So my name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in advance by sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de, or you could just simply ask in the chat field. Today is the last live stream of the month. We will be doing a Zoom meetup for the last 2 hours. So we'll go about 2 hours and then have a Zoom meetup. I think I posted a link to it already. I'll kind of do it throughout the live stream as well, periodically, but we'll go for about 2 hours. So it's a little shorter than our normal live streams. But if you haven't been to a Zoom meetup, it's always great and wonderful to meet people from all over the world. And you could hear someone else speak besides myself, which is probably refreshing for a lot of people. But we'll be doing that in just a couple minutes. So with the live stream, we will try to get through as many questions as we can, as completely and as succinctly as possible. The ability for me to answer the questions in a real-time manner will be lost pretty soon as we do that. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could refrain from repeating it, because asking the same question over and over again just kind of slows down the whole process. And as we do that, when asking questions, if you could include which version of Cubase, whether it's Cubase 11 Elements or Cubase Pro 10.5, and which operating system, that would be helpful as well. Just a couple notes of thanks I want to pass on. So another additional wonderful resource of information for Cubase related topics. You can check out the Cubase Nation Discord, and that would be Jazz Dude does a lot of work to compile information there. So it's a wonderful resource of tutorials and a collection of different information. We will try to have the index of all topics covered with timestamps. I'll get that posted later tonight. But if you wanted to search for previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm compiles and creates that website. So kudos to him. And we also have 2 moderators on the live stream. So a special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude for their work that they do in moderation and keeping any riffraff out. We usually have a very well-behaved community, and I appreciate that. Okay, so with that, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America as a product specialist for focusing primarily on Steinberg products. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. And let's go ahead, since we have a shorter amount of time for questions than usual, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so we see question from Mark Rabin. I have a question. In Groove Agent, if you have a project at 100 BPM and use a style that's 140, what is really happening to this sample? So let's go ahead and take just a quick look. So let's say if I wanted to add an instrument track, let's just do a quick Groove Agent. All right, so in essence, basically what these patterns are is playing MIDI information through the different instruments. So as I come over here, let's say if I go to my patterns, let me load the kit with the patterns this time. Sorry about that. So as we would select a pattern, I hit play. It's going to basically play this MIDI information, this MIDI data that's in this pattern. And since it's MIDI, we can now just kind of change the tempo, let's say to 100 beats a minute. So if I get my keyboard set right, it's now just going to play the MIDI information slower. So we don't have any like artifacts or degradation of time stretching, because in essence, it's the MIDI data that's in the pattern that's triggering the particular sample. So if we want to go like really low tempo, or let's say, okay, I want to go 4 times that tempo. There's no loss of quality. It's just the MIDI information is playing and triggering back at a slower tempo as we do that. All right, so we see Neurotic Nexus. We have Matthew Elston on the live stream. We have Mr. Rick Panic from Kansas City. Glad you could join us. All right, we have Uno Memento from Finland. All right, Jazz Dude wants people to smash the like button. All right, we see Jan from Stockholm is on. All right, Soren from Sweden. All right, we have Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. All right, and we have Marcos Gomez checking in. And we have Bob Sandler from Macon, Georgia. All right, so I see just a comment from Neurotic Nexus, a Zoom meeting from the start. So we'll go about 2 hours, and then about a little after 2 hours after the live stream start, we'll migrate to the Zoom. So we'll do kind of a half Zoom session, half live stream. All right, so we have a question from Dallas LaRue. Is the buttons that say install to the right of the Steinberg downloader things that can or need to be installed? So when we're in the Steinberg download assistant, then there's some confusion with this. And some people, when you click on your object, the program that you are installing. So let's say if I come... Just get this opened here quickly. So if I, for instance, had Cubase Artist 11, I would just come over here to Cubase Artist 11, and then this is all of the different content that comes with Cubase Artist 11. And if I had Cubase Pro 11, you could see all of the available content from here. So just because you can download other programs doesn't mean that you have the license to run it. But once you kind of select on your project, or if you enter your download access code, that should take you directly to the product download. And so once you do that, then everything to the right here of your selected product that you have the license for will be included in the license. All right, so we have Thermonuclear War from Serbia. We have Filter Freak joining us. Great, thanks for joining. All right, so we see a question. I need to make -5 dB on all tracks events to give my master level more headroom. I had automation on several tracks. How can such a change be done? All right, so let's come over here. I'll just load up a different project. So let's say I have automation. So let's say I think we could even... So, if you have automation on tracks, there's a couple ways to do it. One is you could send all of the tracks directly to a VCA folder, to a VCA. This is kind of an easy way to do this. And once we go, if I add these tracks to the VCA folder, let me just add selected tracks. So do it correctly this time. So I'll just say, okay, I want to select all of these tracks in my project. And then right click and we'll do add VCA fader to selected channels. We'll have kind of our master VCA fader. And then all you have to do is just kind of bring this down -5 dB, and that could adjust that. You could also select, the tracks here. And if you wanted to just, come right here and you could just, adjust the automation for selected tracks. If we select all your automation tracks here, we could just go to the info line and bring all of the automation down like so. But if you have automation, or if it's just a static value, the VCA is a great place to do that. Or you could just select all of your automation tracks and just come right here to the info line and use the mouse scroll wheel to go up or down. Okay, so I said I just see recently the audio for the media bay stopped working for no reason. Everything else in the control room works. So if you're just doing previews for different components in the media bay, a lot of people will come over here and realize as they're playing, just to make sure that that you have the volume, the preview volume set here. So if that's set really low, you may not hear the preview. Remember me. And then you could also, have it not set to automatically autoplay. So as we select, so if you don't see the playhead position move in a preview, it could be that this button got unchecked. And also just check that you have the preview volume turned up there. So those are two things that I would check, Dallas. All right. So I see from Filter Freak, if you could let me know if I sound quieter today. I'll do a quick look at my levels and OBS. It looks like that's pretty good. I don't want it to be distorting for an hour or so. But if anyone else thinks I'm too quiet, just let me know in the comments. All right. So great to see Taylor Sapp from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. Okay, so you see Taylor has a feature request, option to save history for undoing after project has been closed and reopened. So, there's been, I've been in some discussions with that, and then it gets to a point where, some functions you could do that with if you wanted to do like for direct offline processing. But at a certain point, you may not want your project files to be, huge in size. So I'm not sure if that's practical to do it, but I'll pass it along, Taylor. All right, and we have Brian Sawyer checking in from Eastern North Carolina. All right. Just kind of reading through comments. Thanks for all great positive comments. All right. Apparently, in Neurotic Nexus is telling me in German, we say Greg is a Cubase Ergenstein. I probably said that completely wrong. I hope that's a compliment. All right. We have Robbie Bowling checking in from Dallas. All right. All right. And we have Chris checking in from Columbia, South Carolina. We have RKR also from Las Vegas. All right, so we see how to stop and insert like reverb in one special measure. So let's say if I have Like, let's say if I'll just revert this quickly. And let's say on my snare drum, I'm going to have too much reverb. So say, just make sure an insert. Okay, so I'll come here. So depending on your insert, you could just automate it. So let's say if I want to come over here to reverb and I want it to be so if I wanted to just click on like the R and W. So let's say, okay, we'll have so now everything that we just do here is automate it. So as I move my mouse here, we see it's just going to play back and record the automation. So, you know, most of the reverb plugins will have a mix dry ratio. So if you're running it as an insert, just automate that particular parameter and you could turn off the reverb and automate it at particular times. Okay, so we see a question from Brian Sawyer. It says, using VST instrument, i.e. using contact with the keyboard controller, I can't get the volume to come close to the rest of the recorded tracks. So sometimes what could cause that is, especially you see this in a lot of orchestral stuff, Brian. So let's say if I come over here to Halion Sonic SE. So sometimes you may need to have... like to send a particular message, maybe a mod wheel to have the volume up high. So let's say if I come over here and I think the Halion Symphonic Orchestra is kind of does this as well. So let's say if I wanted to come here to quick strings, okay, so now when I come here, it may not be so loud until I move the modulation wheel or expression wheel. So as soon as you kind of bring up like, you know, the expression wheel or the modulation wheel for a lot of different instruments, so it could be something just like that. So let's say, okay, I want to come here to cello. That as soon as I move the modulation wheel up, so you may want to check within Contact to see if that's a library that you're using that may just simply... you may have to move either like the modulation or the expression wheel. So here in Halion Symphonic Orchestra, they call it expression controller, and you could pick which controller will do that. But if it seems like, why is it, you know, we get this question a lot, you know, why is Halion Symphonic Orchestra sound so bad? It's like, move your mod wheel up and that will kind of add to the level of expression. So give that a try, Brian. All right, so it's just see a question. Hi, I watched a stream a while ago about the chord track and being able to move the quantize of the chord notes randomly to different positions. Can this be done in the edit window scale helper page? All right, so let's say I'll just open up something with a chord track in it. All right, so let's say if I just wanted to move, I'll just add just a quick instrument here. So let's add a Hallian Sonic SE. All right, we'll open up instrument from Amped Electro, which comes in Absolute 5. So, but if I wanted to now just kind of drag these events down, you know, we could move them. Let me just move it so that it's... Okay, so let's say I'll come over here and let's look. I'll go ahead and glue these together, all together, these separate chords. Okay, so if I wanted to adjust kind of, you know, randomize the position, let me just make sure. So you want to move the quantize of the chord notes randomly to different positions. Can just be done in the edit window scale helper page. So, you know, once we have, so if you take the chord tracks, you could drag it down to the MIDI part, to a MIDI track or an instrument track, and that will automatically load up here. So that way, and here at this point, you could adjust and quantize the chord notes randomly if you wanted to different positions. So once you've done that, so, you know, this doesn't really involve the scale assistant page, you know, but that data you can just kind of drag down and be able to kind of quantize within the editor. But let me know if I'm kind of misunderstanding the question. All right. So I just see question, how should we write automation? So, you know, whatever track that you wanted to write automation on, you know, let's say if I just wanted to, you know, like as we saw before, if I wanted to go to my vocal track. So if I wanted to just come right over here, you could click on the W and the R. So the W is going to be write automation. So now if I wanted to record these changes, and it's basically for any parameter. So if I wanted to adjust the EQ, I could do that. I could adjust the panning. Volume, and now all those things have been recorded directly as automation. So click on the W button and then just move whatever parameter you want, and then that will automatically engage the read button to play back your written automation, and you could turn that off manually if you wanted to. All right, so we see all right, so we see from Soren that the VCA for the -5 dB change will work for him. All right, great that Graham Witcher could make our live stream early today. That's great. All right, and we have Dave also from Montana near Yellowstone National Park. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I just see a question from Vanny, Cambodia. Hi, brother, I'm completely blind, but I want to use this app. How can I use it? So a lot of people will use it with screen readers. So obviously, I think there's one kind of built into Mac OS. Lots of people I know run it with JAWS. So, I know that for years, I think Stevie Wonder might be on Mac now, but he was running it with JAWS for a number of years. One of my mastering friends, Greg Lukens, who runs Cubase as well. In addition to Wavelab, he uses just kind of standard JAWS screen reader. So they're able to be quite successful with it. Okay, so we see from John Costigan. Hello, Greg. I tried to download SX3 to salvage some old projects, but I don't have the required product installed. I don't own it. Can I still get an install? So once you have like any later version of Cubase, so your Cubase 11 license will serve as a license for earlier versions. So back to SX1 to SX3, Cubase 10, Cubase 5, Cubase 7. So you could just download it from our website. And there's a SX3. And if you can't find the download location, just let me know. But if you just say, Cubase SX3 download, you can just install it, and your e-licenser code that you use for 10.5 or 11 will automatically work directly with that will serve as a license for Cubase 3 for SX3 as well. All right, so we have people checking in from Russia. That's great. Thanks for joining us. All right, so it's just see from Kevin McKenzie says, you answered my question in a previous hangout about resyncing imported drums to existing stereo track already by email to much more detail. Can you please check that out? So if you could just let me know exactly which question it was, Kevin, that would be great. I know I have some questions we'll be doing in a little bit. So we see question, is there a way to create a snare roll in Groove Agent? Can you show? So, if you have Groove Agent, just kind of installed, let's say I'll just come here to a new track version, and let's say as I'm playing along here, it's not necessarily in Groove Agent where you could do it, but let's say I have my inspector, and I will just create a drum map from the instrument, and let's look at our drum editor, and I'll just program a horrible drum beat. All right, so let's say if I was here, and I'll just solo this, it's really just kind of programming in. All right, so let's say, okay, I come here, and I have kick. So let's say I have something awful like that, and I just want to put in like a little snare fill. You could just kind of draw it in pretty easily. Or Or even if you wanted to say, okay, now I just wanted to paint in, 16th, eighth note triplets. So let's put a 16th note triplet in here. So you could do stuff like that, but Groove Agent is kind of the sound source. If you want to do it with the full version of Groove Agent, you could program kind of in a very similar manner. So let's say if I wanted to go to Groove Agent, the full version of Groove Agent, and the full version of Groove Agent, you could edit the patterns and create your own patterns in a very similar drum grid. So let's say if I wanted to, so in the full version of Groove Agent, which is like in Absolute 5, you can come over here and go to Pattern. And then, once you go to the pattern itself, you can now select the particular pattern and say, okay, let's come right over here. But if you go to but you can just kind of edit the particular pattern here. I just had it up, and you can bear with me for a second. But if you click on pattern, you could just kind of draw in snare rolls there, and that could be internal to Groove Agent. So. Okay, so we see a question. While we are editing MIDI notes, is there a way we can see the audio file waveform from other track also in the background to make precise editing of MIDI notes? When you do this, what you could do, so, it doesn't get overlaid. But let's say if I move this down towards the bottom here and I select a MIDI part, and if we have this set to synchronize, we could just have the parts kind of, right on top of each other, but there's no way in the MIDI editor to kind of superimpose the waveform image. But if you keep this, this button here, these little 3 rings that are attached, that will synchronize the zoom between the editors and the project window. And you could just kind of move that, or, just move the particular track here and do editing and see, kind of get a relationship between the waveform and the MIDI event. Okay, so you just see, hi Greg, how can I email a project to myself and open it in Cubase Pro 11? So all you have to do is, if it's just the MIDI information, it's probably small enough. If you start getting into audio files, if you have a lot of vocals that have been recorded, you may have to use a service, something like Dropbox or WeTransfer, and then you could email it to yourself. But if you're doing it to yourself, you could probably also just, put it on a thumb drive perhaps, but it's really just, taking the particular project file. So if you wanted to jump here, let's say, okay, I want to go to my documents. So if you don't have a lot of audio, you could just, email the .cpr file. If you have a project with audio, you're probably going to need to, in your Mac OS, just come right over here and then compress the folder and then upload that with something like WeTransfer or Dropbox or Google Drive, something like that, and then send yourself a link and download it that way, because that could be too big for a lot of different email servers. So, all right, great to see JVI in the live stream. All right. All right, great to see Rob from Tarpon Springs and Kaiwen Franklin, who I think is also from Florida. All right, and we have Gasper from Slovenia. All right, and we have Jean-Marie on the live stream. Glenn Dozier from Suffolk. I think I saw your daughter's wedding picture on Facebook. Looked great. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a way to temporarily send an instrument to an effects channel like a hi-hat without using automation so it doesn't change other drums being processed through the effects channel? You know, one thing that you could do, you know, if you wanted to not affect other sources, is maybe just do a quick direct offline process. So let's say if I wanted to jump to a particular project here. So I'll just say, let's get to this. And if I wanted to put, let's say, as we listen to this, I just wanted to put, you know, a reverb on the hi-hat. So let's say as we're listening. So if I sell the hi-hat here, and I'll make this louder so we could all hear it a little easier. So let's say I want to put like a delay just on, or we'll say a reverb. I could just select the range and go to audio and just choose plugins. And I'll just say, let's put reverb on. I'll just say, let's put revelation on it. So right now, when we play it back, the revelation will be applied to that particular file. And you'll hear their tracks kind of bleeding through. So it's only that particular instrument. And then when it's done, and you know, if you wanted to change it, you could just at any time, even after saving the project, is just to delete that. So that would be kind of a quick, easy way of doing it. So without using automation. Okay, so we have a feature request. Any chance to see in the next version of Cubase option to move the track if it was freezed? So, you know, maybe one of the things that you could do, you know, in lieu of that, you know, instead of moving to frozen track. So I know a lot of times if we have a particular, let's say, I'll just go to this project here. All right, so let's say if I take this particular track and this is going out to VST instrument and I choose to freeze the track. So once I do this, now I'm kind of locked into what we do and I can't physically move the event. But instead of freezing it, you know, try to just do a render in place. And then if you just come here to the edit menu, do a render in place, we'll go to the render settings. And at this point, I'll just say, okay, I want, you know, we could choose what exact processing we want on it. So I'll just say mute source event. So as we render, we could still have the original MIDI information here. We could have that muted, and now I can just move the event freely. So maybe instead of using the like freezing tracks, use the render in place, and that may make a little more sense. And then you have more flexibility with being able to move the events. So, and I think you have a lot more flexibility for naming tracks and, stuff like that. So I think it's kind of a more contemporary version of what freeze, should be in 2021. All right, so we see Korean Jesus is Cubase Index answered all my questions this week. I'm here to get answers to questions I didn't know I had. All right, that's great. All right, so we see from Tim Weinheimer. Let me just get the question back. What Groove Agent expansion kit pack has Brazilian percussion elements in it? So my first thing would be to go for the actual percussion agent in the full version of Groove Agent. So let's say if we go to our full Groove Agent here, you could go to... I will just go ahead. Let's load a kit with patterns. And with the main Groove Agent, you get a percussion agent that's kind of standard with it. So I'll just come over here. Let's say I'll just do like Disco Craze. And as I do this, you could have different patterns that have been programmed. You'll have kind of full instrument sounds. And now if you wanted to, just bring in other instruments, I could say, okay, instead of a tambourine, I want congas. And I wanted this to be more complex. And I wanted the intensity, like the rhythmic intensity, to change. And I wanted this to be, like my shaker, to be half time. Or to be double time. And I wanted to change the accent. So let's say I want the shakers to be on the and of 2. And I wanted to add more swing. So you could just kind of bring in different elements and different instruments from your percussion agent right here. So let's say, okay, I just want to come to... And let's go ahead and just, even just... So you can just kind of have, and the beauty of this is it will automatically just synchronize with whatever project you have. So let's say if I just wanted to take, I'll just open up just random project here. Let's see if this is the right one. All right, so let's say I'm just playing like a random project. I'll just add Groove Agent, the percussion agent, into it. So this is often what you could do just to get a produced sounding track. So I'll just say follow the transport. Let's just randomly choose a pattern. So I will go ahead and mute this and we'll bring it in. So let's say now I just unmute it.
It all began the moment I laid eyes on him.
So if we take it out,
touch my hand,
so something that was kind of
and the sky
cool,
turned
but
magic blue.
you could just add that nice little touch.
And I was falling before I knew.
So instead of like, you know, if you have the full version of Groove Agent or an Absolute 5, just use the percussion agent. I think it's a wonderful tool. All right, great to see Michael Pierce on the live stream. All right. Okay, reading through comments. So thanks for all the great comments. And then we have Randy Lee in the live stream. It's great. All right, so just see from Kaiwen Franklin. Just scroll back up. Sorry, it's just saying. I was wondering if we will get some new sounds, loops, and styles with Cubase 12. Just wondering. So you know, generally there's we'll just have to kind of wait and see what's going to be in there. But you know, generally they do add some more content to each release. But I don't know for sure. We'll have to wait and see what's actually released with the next version of Cubase. Okay, so we have a feature request for Cubase feature to print $20 bills. That would be so awesome. So I think that's definitely in the next version, but don't tell anyone. All right, just kidding. All right, so we have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. So I think the ice cream will begin. It's always great. All right, so Uno Memento wants to know who has not pressed the like button. All right. Jazz Dudes wants people to smash the like button. All right. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there any way to load my VSTi or VST effect in Media Bay F5? I mean, not load through VST or VST presets. So let's say if I just wanted to come here, let's say, okay, so if we want to do it in the full Media Bay, so I think that it's going to be, you know, just going to, so, you know, as you come over here, you're not going to see necessarily the actual instruments, like the plugin list here. But, you know, to do that, so, you know, here, if you go to like your VST sound, you can say, okay, I want to go to backbone and go to my presets here that we could see, you know, kind of all of the presets and drag and drop and, you know, load up an instrument that way. So, but, you know, if you wanted to do it by kind of the instrument name, you would just probably come over here and just say, okay, here, I just wanted to add, you know, retro log and drag it over. So, you know, but in the full Media Bay, you don't necessarily see that, but you could kind of just drag and drop the different instruments and sounds right from the right-hand media bay. So that kind of gives you more of a drag and drop workflow. We can think of more as the full media bay as being more based on the presets, sounds, and loops and samples. All right, so we see how to make a sampler in mono. So if you wanted to have, mono sounds, you could just take, any sound. Let's say we go to our sampler control here, drag it over. So let's say, okay, I want to take this sound, and then on the sampler track itself, if you wanted to have mono sound, you could just as an insert, under spatial and panner, if you go to the image, so let's say, if you wanted to even go to the imager plugin, you could just put it on 1, and then just adjust the width to 0%. So now as I play back, it's very mono. So if you wanted to do that, but I think, that kind of far, the ability of having stereo kind of far outweighs that. But if you wanted something to be very, deadpanned in the center, once you have a stereo track, also another method to kind of make it more mono sounding is if we're in the mix console that, let me just get rid of an output bus here. And let's say if we go to the panner of the particular sample track, we could just say, okay, I want to have, combined panner. And then you could just take the panning and just put it straight in the center if you wanted to. And that will give you mono sound. All right, great to see Charles K in the live stream. All right, so I just see, will there be an intelligibility gauge in the next version of Cubase? So I don't know, I know that there is an intelligibility meter in Nuendo, because we're working closely with Netflix for people doing post-production for dialogue. So there's, we sometimes we'll see some of the features kind of trickle down from Nuendo into Cubase, but I think that may be, specifically kind of a post-production thing, but I'll pass it along, Mark. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to use Arranger Track to run segments with or without automation and effects? So if we have a sampler track that's kind of set up here, so let's say if we have our Arranger Track rather, and if you wanted to now, so let's say, we have the play order and we have this activated, and let's say if we choose to flatten the chain, so now if we come over here, everything will kind of be just kind of flattened, and you could turn, if you wanted to take, when this is repeated, at that point we could say no effects here, we could add effects there. So once it's kind of flattened out, but the arranger track itself won't necessarily tie directly into like the mix engine or like automation. But if you wanted to just flatten it, and that basically takes all the repeats that you did in the arranger chain out to a new project, that you could do it there quite easily. So if you wanted just different quick variations. Okay, so a question from Michael Pierce on included content. Here's a question: if I delete an old version of Cubase, I assume I'll lose the media that was included with it. Can we merge media libraries from different versions? So generally, if you delete it, the content is going to be stored like in your application support folder on your Mac. So often deleting the Cubase program will leave that particular that content in place, so that if you uninstalled just a program or did an update, that you don't have to reinstall the content every single time. If you needed to actually go back, so generally just removing the program from your Mac or uninstalling the application doesn't affect the content that's installed with it. But if you go to the Steinberg, if you went through and specifically deleted the content, all the content that's available would still be within the Steinberg download assistant for Cubase 11. Okay, so Michael Teams will give free ice cream if you whack the like button. So that's good. That's good. So we see, does Cubase have a noise removal tool like FL Studio? So currently there isn't a noise reduction tool inside of Cubase. Some people would use, you could do some of it with Spectral Layers 1. So if you did have, a particular noisy thing that you wanted to work with, you could edit out noise in Spectral Layer 1, but there's not like a denoising particular tool. But if you wanted to come over here to audio and let's say extensions to Spectral Layers, that at here you could choose like, specific frequency ranges to delete if you wanted to get rid of noise, but nothing that's like a specific denoiser. If you get programs like Wavelab, that has restoration capabilities. Okay, so we see from JVI, is there any way to preview a drum kit before it loads like we can in Pad Shop and Retrolog? Okay, so let's say if I'm here, let's go over to media. So I think, because Retrolog and Pad Shop are dealing with smaller samples, let's go and take a quick look. So let's say if I go to Groove Agent SE and I wanted to preview. So let's say now I'll come over here, so I could just do it directly from my, and then if I like that particular preset, I could just drag it right over and load that particular kit directly into. So you could just preview just directly from the media bay right over here. So just kind of select it. So, and select a preset. You'll see a little preview button come up here. And so it's very similar to what you would do with Pad Shop or Retrolog. All right, I'm going to go ahead and post again the link for the live stream. Bear with me just a second, and we'll get started maybe just about an hour from now for our Zoom meetup. All right, just kind of going through a great discussion today. See, Graham's watching the live stream directly or remotely. All right, great to see David M. from Liverpool's made it. Okay, so I just see, I'm not sure if this is part of a other discussion. Okay, I think I understand what that was. Maybe with our freezing discussion. All right. So we have a question. What happens with my Cubase license if my dongle stops working? Do I have to buy another license? So generally no. So make sure that first that you have your e-licenser registered. And once you have your e-licenser registered, if your actual physical USB e-licenser is damaged, they could basically, often what they can do is just kind of remotely shut that down. And if you buy a new e-licenser, then at that point, they could just reissue the license for your new e-licenser. Okay, so I see Michael Teams has granted me 3 scoops of tuxedo cream ice cream today. All right, thank you for that, Michael. All right, so I know I had some questions. I think I might be caught up with the questions here, but I know I had a bunch of questions that were sent in advance, so let me jump over to some of those so we can make sure that we get those in. All right, so last live stream, we just had a question. I was playing around with it after when I was doing the index of how to select all notes of one MIDI channel when editing multiple MIDI tracks. So I just had a brain cramp moment last on Friday's live stream. So let's say if I'm here and I wanted to look at 2 different parts, let's say in the Schubert piece. So let's say I want to look at flute and bass, and I want to see them both in the editor. Okay, so if we kind of look at our 2 different parts, we can... All right, so let's say if I wanted to colorize these by part, that we could see the distinct colors. So the question was the last time of how to select all of like one voice but see the other voice simultaneously. So let's say at this point, you know, we could switch between our flute and our bass part to make one active and one kind of the part that's visually seen. If we actually click on a particular note, we could make that the active part as well, which we could see here. So if I click on a flute note, it will go there. So now if I just hit Control A or Command A, it'll select all of the notes of the particular actively selected voice. So if I'm in bass and then I hit Command A or Control A, it'll select all of the voices in the bass. So you don't necessarily, like, I think I came up with a solution of just coming up with particular, logical editor presets to select based on MIDI channel. But, here, so, we could just, on that active voice, just do a standard select all command, and that will select everything in that particular voice right there. Okay, so we had another question, kind of a follow-up from last week's live stream. It says, "Hi, Greg. Sorry for responding to your question in the live stream so late. I was just curious if there was another method of creating sounds in Cubase and saving them as a WAV file on my hard drive without the use of presets. Currently, I'm teaching myself, and that is the only present method I know of. However, I've seen artists create sounds using an external synth, adjusting parameters, and implementing those newly created sounds into Cubase and then saving and recalling them for later use. I don't know what it's called, creating a sound library, but making your own sounds, but I'm very interested in doing so. If you could give me some advice, I'd really appreciate it." So as you're working, with particular instruments, so let's say, if I will just jump to another project here. All right, so when you see other people that are saving sounds, a lot of times it's going to be presets, especially if it's going to be kind of synthesizer based. So let's say if we add an instrument to this particular project. So just add a retrolog patch. Okay, so say, all right, so if I wanted to just, come right over here and, change the sound, I could recall that at any time, using different presets. But, so, and then, if I just come over here, I could save that and call it up at any time. If so, and this doesn't necessarily have to be a WAV file if so that's probably the most common way of doing it. If you wanted to specifically turn it into a WAV file, I could just say, okay, I wanted to have one note here. And as I draw that particular note in, if we go to our sampler control, what I could do is I could just take like a particular part that's MIDI, like a MIDI part that's being routed to a virtual instrument, and I could drag it over into the sampler track. So once I've done that, at this point, I could just come over here and just, do my rendering of different elements right here. And now this we'll turn it into a WAV file. When we go to our pool window, we'll go to our audio, you'll see a sampler track, and now you could just come over here and be able to have that as a particular WAV file that could be used anywhere, or a sampler track that you could just play. So just take, a particular audio file here, that you've, any MIDI pattern that you've played. So let's say, okay, I'll just come here. So if I wanted that as a preset sound, I could I'll just erase this part here real quick. So it's, so let's say I'll just record a note into here. So, and then if I wanted that as the basis for sample, I could just come, just drag that right to the sampler track. And now I could say, okay, this was actually an E. And now as I play in, and that would have the sound. So that's another way of kind of doing sound design. A really quick, easy way. If you have like multiple sounds together, you could just kind of come right over and have the ability to and then that would be just a normal WAV file that you could import or export into any particular project. Okay, so we had a question mailed in from Doug from Charlottesville. It seems you can create competing pitch bends for a single instrument or MIDI track. This might be useful, but can be confusing. The attached image of a MIDI bass line with two competing pitch bends outlined. So, and in the image, it's basically showing, so if I come here, we could just, I'll just recreate the image here. So we have like coarse tuning. So I could just say, all right, so if we have, automation here that was set up for coarse tuning, and this competing with pitch bend. So often these two functions can be, tuning the instrument. Not all instruments will have a coarse tuning. But some instruments will. So it's a pretty common instrument parameter, but you will be able to find instruments quite easily that may not have coarse tuning as an automatable parameter. So, when we do this and we, adjust a note. So let's say if I just play a particular note, you could just, do your coarse tuning here for that one particular oscillator. But if we draw in pitch bend, if we do pitch bend, you could set kind of the pitch bend range here, but the coarse tuning could also be based on the instrument, for each oscillator. So if you have 3 oscillators in use on a particular instrument, you could adjust the coarse tuning on each oscillator differently and have different automation parameters. So while, they could, both parameters, pitch bend as well as coarse tuning in the instrument can change the pitch, are often kind of used for different purposes. People will often do, especially since Cubase 11, when we come over here and we do pitch bend, we could set the range of pitch bend to match the instrument, and we could actually show kind of a semitones grid. So if we wanted to draw pitch bend data in, so let me just select all of our pitch bend data here, that we could also have this snap. So, if I wanted to do a pitch bend and have that automatically go to the next value, that at that point you could have this just pitch bend snap to not being flat or sharp, but to actually do pitch bend based on the actual range of the particular instrument. So if you wanted to come here and, you could also just, at that point, just come over here and make sure that you do the pitch bend in tune. So you can think of the coarse tuning in instruments as being able to kind of change the sound of the different components of the instrument. So people often do coarse tuning to make it sound thicker, whereas pitch bend is going to be more global based. All right, so we had a question. So it says, I watched a video of Kane Churko was soloing one guitar track, and then he did like 2 clicks, and he was able to hear not only his guitar track, but his drum and bass tracks all together. I already tried to soloing the group channel, but noticed that if you took me more than 5 mouse clicks to do this, and this makes me feel slow still. What would you suggest to do this simple function in Cubase 11 Pro? All right, so we're going to set up a couple of conditions so that, you know, and then basically, and he was kind enough to email a video link that as they were doing different functions that, let me just revert this quickly. But as we're kind of selecting different functions, that it was soloing those particular tracks pretty quickly. So let's say if I wanted to set up Cubase to behave this way, we would just set a couple of preferences. So one is under editing. We would say track selection follows event selection. And then when we go to editing to project and mix console, we want to make sure that enable solo is available on the selected track. So now what this will do, if I have the track already soloed, I could come over here, and when I select an event, that selects the track, and that in turn solos that particular track. So if I wanted to just come over here and let's say, as we're playing, so while we're playing our track, if I just selected a particular track or selected an event here, and let's say I had solo enabled somewhere else. So I could just come here, select that. And now if I select the bass part, the bass is soloed. And if I want to do this for a range of tracks, just come here, I could select a range. All those different tracks would be soloed. I want to select the 2 guitars. I want to select the bass and the overheads. I want to select the overheads, bass, and guitars. Just the guitars. So at this point, you could just kind of come over here, and once you have that kind of set up, you know, you could just say, okay, I just want to select that particular event, and then whatever you have selected, you could just have soloed for you automatically very quickly. So, and this could be a behavior that you could set up a macro just to switch those particular preferences. So if you wanted to go to key commands to turn this functionality on or off, I think we could do it in a macro. So I'll just say solo selected event. And then we'll go to our preferences. So let's say we'll go to editing. Track selection follows event selection. So let's add that, and then just to enable solo on selected track preference. Let's take a look for that. Okay, so just go under project and mix console. And now if you wanted to just come right over here, we could add that function. And then if you wanted to turn that functionality on or off, you could create a macro and assign the key command for the particular macro to be executed from, you know, any key command. So you could just say solo selected. So solo selected events, assign a keyboard shortcut for that, and you could turn that on or off. So it's a great question. Thanks for sending that in. All right, so we have a question. I have this problem when I record through my Audient ID 14 interface. All audio that comes in and then processed with Vari Audio appears one octave lower. For example, my acoustic guitar, its normal range is from E2 to E5, but in Vari Audio, it appears from E1 to E4. What will be the problem? Use Cubase Pro 10. Thanks, and greetings from Miguel. And I think I responded by email to this. So, you know, a lot of times when we deal with MIDI note numbers, you know, what could be often used as MIDI note numbers can be based on a piano, which has 88 keys, or you know, most sequencers will deal with, you know, there's 128 MIDI notes. So there can sometimes be discrepancy in what middle C is or which octave it is based on, some will be based upon what the piano is set to, and some will be based on the extended range of MIDI. So I think probably what you're seeing is that, you know, Cubase is going to utilize the full range of MIDI notes that are available to access. So. Okay, so we had a question mailed in. Hi, Greg. On August 24th live stream, you answered a question I've been wondering about. How to determine the pitch of a kick drum within Vari Audio and or statistics. This got me thinking about the typical method of sidechaining the kick in the bass guitar track to help keep the kick out front, because I just had a question. Because they can often occupy the same tonal space. Doesn't this attenuate the bass, therefore causing loss of bass waveform in the mix at the moment? My question, I don't know if this is a new concept or one that is in use already. Assuming the song's in the key of A, can I somehow render my audio kick, which may be G sharp, to a note sympathetic of the root chord A to eliminate the need for sidechaining bass using Vari Audio or Groove Agent? If so, how to record different notes to group track so I could comp note samples via lanes and check each note within the entire mix. Is it possible to create a macro for these functions? And this is from Don Miller, Cubase 11 Pro. So, you know, one of the things that you could do that's quite you know, that may make a lot of sense for this type of workflow is, let's say I have kind of a project here set up, and let's say I have a kick drum sample. So when we listen to just our kick, okay, so let's say that's our kick sample, and I wanted to know what the pitch was in Vari Audio. So I'll just come here quickly, and we see that's a B -1. All right, so if we drag, you know, if we create a sampler track, we could just drag that particular sample into the sampler track. And now we could play this particular sample across our keyboard. Okay, so let's say if I just had like a very simple, like 4 on the floor pattern here for my kick drum. So I'll just come here. All right, but let's say I employed the chord track. So I just said, okay, we're going from a C chord to a G chord to an A chord to a C chord. So if I want it, I could just select that particular track, and we go to chords, and I'll say just follow root notes. And at this point, I'll just say, let's synchronize. So now as we do this, the sample track, once we know what the original pitch is, will automatically change based on the chords. So now as we play, so that's one way to have the kick kind of, related harmonically to the chord tracks, and stuff like that can help clean up the low end pretty well when it's kind of actually in tune. All right. So we had a question about spectral layers. So it says from Alexander. The question is about Spectral Layers 8 Pro. If I have my Cubase Pro 11 with Spectral Layers 1 and I want to unmix drums, vocal, and bass, I need to buy the Pro version, right? Yes. So if you wanted to unmix the different components, it's the Spectral Layers Pro that's needed for that. What are the main options in the Pro version? Can you explain, please? So once you get into more, Spectral Layers Pro is going to offer that, but it's also going to offer the ability to take different functions and, if I wanted to kind of do stuff like if we go to, where we could unmix components, where I could say, let's unmix the transients. So we could, see the tonal part, the transient, and the noise of samples. We're also going to have the ability, much improved selection tools. And as we work with that, we could also come over here, and as we do processing, there's ambience matching, EQ matching, imprinting. You could do noise reduction, reverb reduction, hum reduction, de-essing, de-bleeding, voice denoiser, so it gives you more options with that. Okay. So, and then he had sent a video. It says, as I sent earlier the issue regarding the white lines in high DPI mode, but work with spectral layers is absolutely not possible in high DPI mode on Windows. Check the small video. So he had sent a video. Of course, I turned off high DPI mode in Cubase. Spectral layers works, but you can understand all in the pixels. So the problems may not be the drivers or motherboards. I have a new power PC with the latest drivers. So I kind of did some research on this, and I think if we come over here to, how to get this, spectral layers kind of, in sync with your, with the high DPI settings. So, and this isn't the case in the Mac, but if you go to Edit, and you'll see Preferences, and then under Display, I think that you'll see an area that says Interface, and then you'll have DPI scalings there that you could set. So make sure and I think it works best at 1 times or 2 times. So you may have to adjust the Cubase high DPI scalings, but give that a try. So again, go to Edit, to Preferences, to Display, and then you'll see kind of, I think it's only on the Windows side, but a DPI scaling. So try setting that to normal and see if that resolves the display issues for you. All right, and I know we had another question. Sorry, let me go to my other computer here. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. All right, let me just see if I could find the... I think this is from JVI. Okay. Okay, so we had a question from JVI. It was kind of sent in. And we'll just go to get this set up with Groove Agent Kit here. Okay, so I think if we go to, let's say we'll play this pattern here. Okay, so let's say we'll just go play this pattern. Okay. Okay, so the question says, if I press a pad and keep it pressed, for example, Groove 05, the following happens. Groove 05 starts playing at start. On the pad, we see the counting starts 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 16. So we'll just come here. So we can see the numbers kind of indicating what beat it is to the right. And we can see visually indicated here. And this will continue and loop till pad is reset. So once it sees another MIDI note message. All right. So that's kind of working as expected. Says now if I released a pad earlier, so before it gets to beat 16 and repress the pad or press another pad, then the pad starts counting at 1 again, exactly what it wants. So if you come here. So now if I come here, that will start the next pattern at beat 1. Okay, so it says now comes a problem. I also want this behavior when the song is playing. However, when the song is playing, the counter will not reset to 1. Whether a pad is played or not, Groove Agent will always count to 16. And if the pad is hit again, it will continue wherever it is in that count. And this happens across different pads. For example, if I press play or record in the project window, I press pad to Groove 005, the pad starts playing and will start its count to 16. But if I release it after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then count 3 beats in my head and repress the pad does not reset but continues at 9, 10, etc. Okay. So let's come over here and let me just knock this time. So I'll go ahead and play. So as we come here, let's say Cubase is in play mode. Okay, so let's say now when I play, I let go. Okay, so let's say while it's playing. So we'll stop playing there. Let's see, I think it might be set to default mode. So let's say if I come here. All right, so right now we have this set to sync to beat. So let's say if I take sync to beat off. So let's say if I put this, so I think what we want to do is to have this play back. So let's say if we just have this not set to sync to beat, so I think what you want to do is to have this automatically kind of play starting at 1 while this is synced up, but you may have to manually drop it in, but play with the 3 different modes here, and instead of trigger, instead of going to play mode, maybe if you set this until next measure for the trigger mode and see if that kind of gets you. I'll play some more with it. But, see if that helps with that. All right, so I'm going to go back to our live chat. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and post the live stream link one more time. So we'll get started in about 25 minutes. Okay. All right, we'll continue on. And if you learn something new, make sure that you do hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. All right, just finding my spot where I was. Okay, I think I'm almost where I was. All right, so we see Daryl from Oakland on the live stream. It's great for you to be able to join us. Okay, so we see a question, how to make a score and edit it for printout. Kindly reply my question. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. So let's say if I wanted to just come to this particular project. All right, so if I want to see, if I've sequenced different parts in, I could now just view it in my MIDI editor. I could view it in a list editor, like an event list, or we could just say, go from your scores menu to the score editor. And there's going to be two different views of looking at this in the score editor. So if you wanted to see it in kind of an edit view, and this is more intended for editing particular musical parts, but it may not show you what's going to look like on the printed page. And if you wanted to do that, that would be set up in page mode. You can have different options on the right-hand side. So like inspector settings. So if you select different components, you could come over here. You could change the note head shape if you wanted to put text in. If you select the clef, if you select the bar line, if you select, the time signature, you can just kind of see a lot of different functions that will be context sensitive. And, one of the great things is, like, let's say you think that this is too busy. If you wanted to just grab like the glue gun, so if you wanted to have it a bit more dense, or you say, oh, that's a little too, that's a little too dense to read effectively for the musician, you could just come over here and split. There is, when we go to this little hand tool where you could just graphically move notes or events. So if you wanted to just do indentation on the first system, stuff like that, you can now move any element visually. And then once you're done with it, you could just choose to go to your page setup. You could export it as a music XML into a program like Dorco, or export scores. And be able to, if you wanted to export it as a PDF file, print to PDF, or print, you can just do it right there. All right, so we see, hey Greg, how do you delete all automation in a project when you want to start over? Okay, so let's take a look. So let's say, just go to another project here quickly. All right, so let's say if I just have some bad automation going on here. All right, and let's say I just hated all of my automation. So I think that we could even go to the project logical editor. Let's see if we could do it there. And say we want to delete. And we'll say media type is equal to automation. So let's see if we could. So that's all you have to do. So if you go to the project menu, to the project logical editor, say you want to function to delete, and media type is equal to automation, and then just hit apply, and you could save that as a preset if you want to. Okay, so we see from Wayne Murray, my original dongle works fine on my Mac and PC. I purchased a second dongle and neither PC or Mac recognizes it. What am I missing? So, you know, the dongle, you can think of the dongle as a mechanism, kind of a device to hold a license. So if your license is on your first dongle, just buying a second USB-E licenser doesn't move that license to your to the second dongle. You'd have to connect both dongles, you know, so the license can be in one or the other. So, and if you go to the e-licenser program to transfer it, you know, all you need to do is to basically come over here, take the license from one dongle and then just drag it over, and then you could transfer it over. But just purchasing two USB licensors doesn't mean that you have two separate licenses. Think of it like, you know, I want to have a Les Paul at the studio and at my home at the same time. And if you want to do that, then it has to be, you know, have two separate guitars, or you just move the one USB-E licenser back and forth between different computers. Okay, so we see a question. How do I assign an LFO to a VST parameter and record the LFO's automation? Is it possible to do automation and use the LFO for the same parameter? So generally, like, the LFO is just going to, you know, do the particular function, but it may not show up as automation. But let's give it a quick try. Maybe a way to do it. So take a quick look, see if we can get it going. Okay, so let's say I have LFO on parameters here in. So let's say on this parameter I have the LFO. All right, so I have two different LFOs, one doing panning on this. So let's say if I bypass this, so this is just taking kind of a, so now I could have this doing panning for whole notes. And let's say I want to do 16th note volume changes. So let's say now if I want to open up the instrument, and that's just using the Auto LFO plugin. then let's say it's not really a parameter on the instrument, but let's say if I go here to the bass, let's just take a look at this here, see if this is. We have this is doing controller 16. And let me just look at this particular, make sure I'm on the right instrument. Okay, so now we see that this LFO is triggering this parameter on the instrument. So let's say if I come over here and just automate. And we can see if so it doesn't look like it's doing the automation. So it's not going to be tied together with the automation, but the parameters will still be adjusted. I thought that maybe if it was just kind of moving, that it might capture the automation. Let me just... So it doesn't look like it's capturing the automation of that, but so thought it might capture it, but it doesn't look like it is. It's just going to have it as two separate entities. So I don't know if that's possible, but I could play around with it some more. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we have a question. Can I determine the key based on the chords I select in the chord track? So let's say if I have chords here, so let's say if I just wanted to we'll add a chord track. And let's say I'll just drag this up. I'll just go to my project menu. Let's go to chord track and create chord symbols. All right, so say I have that created. So once we actually look at this, you could see the key indicated in the chord track. And if you don't want to see it, you could actually just kind of turn this on right here, and that could show you the key right there from the... It's not necessarily, it's not necessarily from the chords in the chord track, but it'll take the key from kind of the entire song. Okay, so we have a question from Ted Springman. If I have a rhythmic loop containing pitch in Hallian, is there a way to pitch bend and still keep the loop in time with the music? So let's go take a look. Thanks. Glad you could join us, Ted. I think we just had to put it into like audio warp mode. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and make sure Let's make this a little louder. Okay, so let's come over here. So switch to playback. Let's see if I think we need to just put it into warp. But I think we could put it into warp mode and do that. But let's see if I can find how to do it quickly. Okay, audio warp. All right, so now all right, so let's say as I do this, so I could just, so once we put it into audio warp, I could just do my pitch bend. It's the same time. So, but we could just do that. So just come over here to edit to zone once I had to sample in and go down to audio warp. And then you should be able to do the pitch bend without affecting the time. All right, so we'll get started in about 5 minutes on the live stream, on the Zoom meetup. So hopefully a lot of people can make it. I'm going to post the link one more time. Okay, so I see when I have a large project that exceeds the capacity of my RAM, Cubase or Windows temporarily takes up to 15 gigabytes of system disk. However, when I close down the project, not all gigabytes are restored. So sometimes a lot of, dealing with some large sample libraries, there's a lot of times that the samples themselves aren't released from memory from the particular instrument, even if Cubase isn't active. So you can probably find it back to one particular whatever is kind of probably doing most of your samples. If you have a large, it seems like you probably have samples if you have a project that big. Okay, so we just see just a comment from Jeff Zabelski. Says, I still forget how to set the key signature of the project. I'm an oboist from way back, and key in Steinberg seems to mean anything except key signature. So, it's generally there. If you wanted to, if you're setting the key for notation purposes, once we come over here, let's say if I go to just setting it directly here in the score settings. So that could be different, but a lot of times you don't necessarily set it up globally in a project. So, All right, so we see Gareth is on the live stream and Pablo as well. Glad you guys can make it. So we see what version is this? I'm running Cubase 11 Pro. I just see saying someone says, "Yep, I really missed the Cubase. It's always been here." Okay, so we see from Kai, can you show how you found the key of that kick drum? I suppose I could go back and rewatch the section. I see a lot of people talking about tuning their drums and trap and hip hop music. All right, so really there's a couple ways to do it. So one is just kind of come here and let's say I think it was on this project. So say we had the sample here, so I just double clicked. I'll just remove it from spectral layers real quick. And then I just went into Very Audio in the sample editor. So as soon as you come here, do edit Very Audio, and then you could just see the pitch. And if you wanted to say, okay, I want to just change that to be perfect. If it's a little flat or a little sharp, you could just simply, knock it in tune just like that as well. All right, so I just see, so the transport bar is undockable. So if you don't want the transport bar here, all you have to do is, you could, if you go to the setup window, you could just not have the transport bar there. Or if you wanted to hit F2, you could have a floating transport bar. All right, great that Mandy Lang could join us for the live stream. Okay, so we see, how do I start and save my project on an external drive, or how do I start a project folder on an external drive? So when you come here, just go to New File, to New Project, and you'll see here in the Steinberg hub in kind of the bottom center, you can say prompt for project location. Then we can say, okay, create empty. Now you can put the project onto any drive in your system, so you manually set it there. If you kind of put it into the wrong folder and you wanted to migrate it, and not worry about like files not showing up, just go to File to Backup Project, and then I'll ask you to where do you want to create the folder to, and you could just put that onto your external drive. All right, we'll get started here in just a minute on the Zoom meetup, so it would be wonderful to meet people. Okay, so we just see, what MIDI reset, when an instrument holds with now revelation for me. He did it fast, but I saw it brilliant. So yeah, if you do have like a stuck MIDI note, sometimes a MIDI message you may have a note off message and you do something and it doesn't get the note off message. If you just go to MIDI menu and just hit reset, that will send kind of like an all notes off message, and be able to create that and be able to kind of stop any hung MIDI notes. Okay, so all right, so take a last question. Is that after I load a third-party VST plugin in Cubase Pro 10.5, my Cubase window goes to the background and instantly returns when the plugin is loaded. Is there a way to fix this strange behavior? All right, so let's say if I wanted to add instrument track, so I think I have a third-party one, and I say add track. So I don't think that went into the background. And let me see if it says instrument or Cubase window goes in the background, instantly returns. So let me, just. So I'm not sure what would be causing it, but maybe it's a particular plugin. So if you could let us know if it's every plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and migrate over to the Zoom. I'll post the Zoom link. We hope that everyone could make it over and join us. I'm going to paste it one more time. And then I'm going to start the Zoom on this computer here. So let's go to Zoom and I'll get started. So if people want to start migrating over, that'd be great. So I'll hang on the live stream here for a little bit. All right, so we see Uno and Jan, David M. All right, we have Mark. Okay. Okay, so we'll wait just for a couple minutes and we'll keep the live stream going. And we'll have some more people joining us here. All right, so we see Mark. Great to see Mark. All right, we'll wait just a minute here. So, all right, so we have Soren joining us, as well as Tim. All right, and I'll just kind of post the couple of minutes, and we'll keep the live stream going.
Yeah.
All right, and if people want to look at the invitation again, so I'll just kind of put it up. I'll show the meeting invitation. So here's the meeting ID. And this is obviously for doing this live. So if you want to join the Zoom meeting 2 months from now, it may not be going on. All right. So as some more people joining, we'll just wait a couple more minutes and we'll transition over to. All right. So Michael Marshall is joined. All right. In just a minute, I'll go ahead and sign out of the live stream and head over to. Thanks everyone as we do our transition here. All right, so we have Sable Winters. All right, and we have Daryl joining us. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds and we'll migrate fully over to the Zoom. Right. Okay, so I'm going to end the live stream. I want everyone to stay safe and healthy, and we'll, everyone make it over to the Zoom. You can see the link, and look forward to seeing everyone on Zoom. Take care.
No, we are here.
All right. Okay, how's everyone doing? All right, can you guys hear me okay? Let me just here. All right. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Some reason Zoom forgets my audio configurations, even though I use the same ones all the time. Yeah. All right. So how you doing, Gareth? Good. No problem. Sorry for recording a bass line at double the sample rate. You know. I'll send you. I'll send you the project at 96K. You know, it could be an interesting variation. You know. Yeah. All right. So we have Jean Marie joining us and JVI Owen. All right. Let's see who else is. All right. So, Michael Marshall, have you been on one of the Zoom meetups before? Is it your first? Thanks for joining us. Yeah. Yeah, that's Jan who puts that together. So, wow, that's older than me. So, yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's kind of a good catch-all for just about any type of musical genre. Yeah, that's good. And you're based, where in the UK are you based? Okay. Okay. All right, we'll have our celebrity record mixer, Jean Marie, joining us here. Yeah, so I had one. Yes, I think on the last live stream, Michael Teams was burying all of his cables underneath the new floor. Right? Was it worth it? Yeah. All right. Michael Pierce is joining us now. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry.